Well, it's good to have everybody here tonight, at least the three of us, the three amigos.
Tonight.
Uh, we're missing Jim and Gino, so we will we will try to carry on as best we can. The topic tonight is going to be about sports and pros and cons, especially about competitive sports, how that fits into, of course, we're men on narrow roads, so how does that fit in on uh, being Christian and being competitive and winners and losers and things like that. Certainly, how that can impact the younger people, especially the youth of our day. Pros and cons of that. So, this was a suggestion by Joe, and Joe, I appreciate suggestions. So, who wants to get started here?
So competitive sports, right? Not just sports, because is there such a thing as a sport without the competitive part?
I think obviously there are today because they hand out participation trophies and they have sports where nobody keeps score.
I was waiting for that, and that is something that took me out of scouting.
Okay.
Because all of a sudden the whole thing with being a Royal Ranger leader for many years, I started seeing that they started watering down the competition by making sure that everybody got a ribbon or and no one was left out. And it used to be in the days when my son was younger, before all of this started, when they saw the older boys competing and winning and excelling at something, whatever competition it was. It could have been a sport, it could have been some kind of a climbing competition, whatever it was. The younger boys looked up to the older boys because they could do things that they couldn't do. And their thought was, next year or whenever I can, when I'm old enough, I'm going to be just like them. I'm going to be able to do the same thing. So it actually fired up not so much their competitiveness as much as they were challenged to able to compete and to do things beyond what they were able to do at their current age and physical abilities. So yeah, it was competitive, but it was also a way that it was exemplary for them to be able to excel and go beyond what they were able to do in their current situation. So all of a sudden, all that was taken away from the competitions because they want to make sure that everybody got an award or were praised, whether they even, if they were good or not, it didn't matter. It was just a matter that they participated, and that kind of watered down what it was all about, and I think it really impacted the boys as they grew up. They didn't have that competitive nature, or they didn't have an opportunity to develop that competitive nature, which I think it's key in developing the boy into a man. That's just my opinion, though. I'm not
Okay.
saying it's necessarily true for everybody.
Did you play sports, Joe?
I played soccer in high school and college.
And right now, Jim's going to be saying he asked you a question. Did you play sports?
Oh,
Hmm.
yeah, that would be something a Jim would say. Yeah, I played soccer, but
Okay.
I played soccer and I was very good at it, and recognized in high school. And eventually I went on to play. And I started as a freshman in college. And then I realized that I couldn't do both. It takes a special person to be a student athlete. And I was
Yeah.
just smart enough to do one or the other, not both. So my sophomore year, I decided that going to college and getting an education was more important than playing sports than playing soccer anyway.
Okay.
So I made a decision at that point.
All right.
So your opinion, Joe, is the participation avenues of everyone getting a trophy, everyone being treated equal, is good or bad?
I think it's terrible.
So do I.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
just my opinion, though. I mean, there's a lot of pros and cons for both, right? I think it's healthy to have competition as long as it's well supervised, organized in a way that no one is demeaned in any way or insulted. But coming in second, we've always grown up, Wayne and Barry, that we always said the definition of second place is the first loser, right?
Yep.
Okay.
So,
I heard a quote from George Brett. We remember him?
yeah.
Good baseball player for any young people that might be watching.
Yep.
Um, Hall of Fame baseball player. He
Everybody-
says, uh, if a tie is like kissing your sister, is then a loss is like kissing your grandmother with no teeth. So,
I don't know how healthy that is, though, Barry.
Okay,
That's going a little bit too far.
all right. So, but how about you, Wayne? Did you
Well,
play sports?
I want to stay on where Joe was at there because I think that whenever the rules started to be watered down, even in the Ranger department, even in the Royal Rangers, because the church adopted a lot of the same things that the world was throwing out there. And what it was actually watering down what a man and what a woman is. Now we're to the point where the watering down has brought it to a place where here we are going into men playing in women's sports. And years ago, Billie Jean King challenged was it John McEnroe in a tennis match, and they seen all that, and I don't know whether John McEnroe left her. I don't even know who won that, but I think she did. But I think he probably got paid to let her win. But the thing is, the world started to water this down, and I believe it was probably the start of the new age or the woke circumstances that we see in our world today. And because it'll never stay the same. It's always going to progress. It's a participation trophy today, but I think I'm a woman. I want to play in her league because I think I can do better there. And the rules change so that can happen. It makes it's horrible. It's depleted down manlyhood, where a man had to compete. A man actually, whenever I was a kid, you competed for everything. You competed in the neighborhood football games. And us little kids, when we were little, we got knocked around. We still played. We still got beat up. And then whenever we got older, we beat the little kids up. and quite honestly, that's how life evolves, because those kids got tough too. And it progressed. I'm not saying we beat them up, but we played rough with them, just like the older kids did with us. I had a 3-year-old brother beat the tar out of me, on every sport that there was. And he didn't show any mercy on me, but he made me tough. You know what I mean? And I think that a man's supposed to be a man. That he's not that every man is tough. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that at least you have the ability to have those traits of a man. God created us as a man. I'm sure that the traits followed us. So, and a woman also.
I don't have a daughter. I only had a son, and the challenging him to get better was drove him to excellence, and he still has that competitive spirit that still continues to drive him even professionally. But I don't know when he starts saying they beat the tar out of you and all that. There's limits to it. That's why.
Well, our football games were tough, buddy. They were tough. To phrase it any other word would be
Watering it down.
lying. It was tough. There was many scars that came out of our football battles.
So you played backyard games mostly, or
we played? We played mostly. Our high school couldn't afford coaching, whatever. Our high school was terrible at most stuff, and we had a great baseball team. And but that was it. Wrestling, we were good at wrestling too, because everybody was animals. It's like that's what we did. But there you go. But I have a few of those too. I did play pretty decent baseball for a while, but I just think that we started to deplete manly characters in men by giving participation trophies to everybody that would go out on the team. If we weren't good enough, we didn't get to play.
That's how it was.
That's why we got better, so we could play.
I remember when I was little, remember we used to pick sides, and there's always somebody picking the team. Usually the better two players try to even them out. And I'm telling you what, Wayne, I spent many of my many games, whether it was playing baseball or well, at the time baseball, kind of yeah, or sandlot baseball. It's probably a better way to say it, or football or any kind of game. I remember I was little, and I always got picked last, but I was glad I got picked, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But then as we grew older and we got better at it, and then we would be picked first, and that was part of growing up, as far as
Yeah.
Yeah.
What if you never got better at it?
Well, you know what? That's a great question, Barry.
Yeah.
And then what do? You just walk away and you say, well, I'm no good at it, and that's the end of it, or do you still play? Or good question.
I wrestled in high school. I don't know if I shared before. In ninth grade, I went out for football and I weighed all of 90 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
And they put pads on me, which weighed about 85 pounds. And they said, you're going to go out there and block against the linemen. Well, they put me up against the seniors. Okay. And I'm like a rag dog. They're just tossing me all over the place. And they're just having a ball. And I thought, no, I'm not. I may be crazy, but I'm not stupid. So that's when I said, I think I'll do wrestling, because then somebody my own size I can go up against. So that made a little more sense. But even in wrestling, in ninth grade, I think I won one time out of like 10. And in my sophomore year, I think I maybe won 2 or 3 times out of 10. My junior year, I started to get better, but then I'm a junior wrestling a lot of freshmen. Okay. And then when you're a senior, the rules were you couldn't wrestle JV anymore as a senior.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to make the varsity team, which I did. And then I actually got quite good at it. And I won our sectional tournament, which, regional for you guys, I mean, it was Susquehanna and Camp Hill and Gettysburg and Scotland and Boiling Greens, not Boiling, but Boiling Springs and Big Springs. I mean, all those people, we were all in the same conference. But I got tired of losing, and that's what made me get better.
Oh, I'm glad
I was getting a sunburn wrestling because I was staring up at the lights all the time. But you got to get to the point where you get so tired of losing, you say, I'm going to do something different here. This is going to challenge me and motivate me to get better at my craft. And I worked at it, and I got better.
My interest in this discussion, and maybe I'm being a little bit selfish, is developing the boy into a young man, and eventually into a mature man. Do sports, do they play a role in all that? Is it a positive thing? Is it a negative thing? And what are your thoughts about that?
I see positive and negative in the sports today, and that's true. I don't say that that's new, but I think it's getting worse because parents are getting more and more involved in their kids' sporting activity. If the ref calls a bad penalty on your child, you want to go hit the ref over the head with a baseball bat.
Sure.
Instead of teaching your child, okay, it didn't go your way. What can you learn from this? How can you improve from this? We have gone, and this isn't just sports, unfortunately, in our society. It's it's like in the classroom. Everybody gets an A because we don't want anybody to feel sorry for themselves. We don't want to hurt little Johnny's feelings or something like that. So everybody gets the same grade. And in sports, everybody gets a trophy, and we don't want anybody to feel bad about themselves. And I think we end up teaching them some bad lessons.
Yeah.
That goes on in life. And as soon as you were saying that, Barry, I worked in a union place. Everybody knew each other's salary. We all knew what everybody was getting paid. It was negotiated by the Teamsters. And you know what? There was a lot of great workers. And you know what else there was? A lot of bad workers. And you know what they got paid? The very same thing. There was no incentive whatsoever to be a good worker. Who changed? the bad worker or the good worker?
Mm.
The good worker, for the most part, was influenced by the bad workers. If they don't have to do nothing, why should I bust my tail to do it? And that's the problem. One of the things, the comparison that I have, that if there's no incentive in front of you, if you don't have a goal, if you don't have, or at least have this thought and really take it to heart. I don't work for a company. I tell my boss this at least once a year. I don't work for you. I work for God. Because he tells me all the time, slow down, slow down, slow down. I'm like, I don't work for you. I know how old I am. I know what my body can take, and sometimes I overdo it. And you know what? I pay the price for that. But you know what? It's who I am. And I realize, and I don't do it just for show either. I work for God. I want him to be pleased at what I do. And when you put everything on a level playing field, that your reward, what if God would have said, hey, you can be a sinner all your life. I'd rather you be a saint all your life, but you're all going to heaven, all reaping the same reward. How would this world be? I mean, really, what kind of a chaotic state would we really be in? And so, I don't know, just throwing some weird stuff out there.
Mhm. Well, you started mentioning the spiritual part of it. That we can, sports is a funny thing because it doesn't really have a lot to do with how wealthy you are, where you come from, what color you are, what ethnic background. If you're good at something, well, there's some politics involved in sports, but let's just say for the pure understanding of what sports is, if you're a good player, you should get to play, and it doesn't matter where you come from and who you are and all that. And there's a certain level of purity in sports that I respect. You can go to if let's say you're Eagles fan, right? And you go to watch a game in Philly at the big stadium. I don't know what they call it now. It keeps changing. But anyhow, you sit next to people with different color skin, different ethnic backgrounds. Some were rich, some were poor, and all that. But they're all rooting for the same team. And there's a certain level of camaraderie, or same level of acceptance in the fact that you're all rooting for the same team. And that to me is something that sports brings together that has been ruined lately by the politics of it. And now it's getting better again. But let's think about maybe 5 to 10 years ago, how all of that, the politics and the social justice and all the things that people threw in there ruined that purity of sport, where if you're a fan of a team, you all stuck together and you all rooted together for the same team. So that kind of changed. I was very saddened to see that. And even now, sports are evolving where there's a lot of gambling, a lot of betting going on. And I'm sure there always was. But now it's on television. If you watch any sport, I would say about at least a third of all the advertisement has a lot to do with sports gambling. So
Legalize sports betting now.
legalized, yes, yes, it
Yeah.
is legalized because I think the government always figures out that if somebody's making $1, it might as well be them as well, and
Yeah.
it goes into also legalizing marijuana and a lot of different things.
I like that, Joe, not to go sideways here, but anytime we bring in something new, some new way to the government sees something new to get more tax revenue.
Yeah.
Marijuana.
Yeah, well, marijuana, the lottery, sports betting, and we will improve our roads and improve our schools. Well, no matter how many of these things we add, our roads and schools don't get better.
Hey, they're helping senior citizens.
Okay.
I haven't seen any yet, but they say they are.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about poor Pete Rose?
Yeah.
Poor guy.
So
Yeah, his whole career was destroyed, but yeah, so gambling is a big deal with sports now. And it has gotten to the point I love sports. I mean, I watch football, and there was a time that I would watch football, and in the fall all the way through to Super Bowl, and then there was this period of no sports, and I didn't know what to do with myself. So I actually got interested in watching NASCAR in the and because I just love the competitiveness of sports, and actually it was right after March Madness when that was over in the NCAA basketball tournament and wrestling was over. There was nothing to watch. So I started watching NASCAR just to get through the late spring into through the summer. And I would only watch the last 25 laps of every race because that's when it got good.
Yeah.
But anyhow, the competitiveness, I can't even speak today, but I think you know what the word I'm trying to say is drives a lot of people. I truly enjoy it. But as soon as sports gambling came into the picture, it took that away from me. I don't watch NASCAR anymore. Football, I watch it because I'm embarrassed to say, well, actually, I'm not embarrassed anymore. I'm a Redskins fan now called the Washington Commanders, but they had a very good season last year. But for many years, we wore a bag over our head because, we always got destroyed by the Cowboys. And
Well, they're gonna have a good year next year.
I hope so, yeah.
They are. They are building quite a team there.
But it didn't matter because I just love sports. And now all of a sudden, all of this that's creeping in, whether it's has to do with everybody gets a trophy, and then eventually with the sports gambling, it has taken that love of sports for me out
Yeah.
because I just
I used to watch the Olympics a lot
okay,
because we knew the Russians that they were pro athletes. We all knew that. And our hockey team or whatever back in 1980,
the miracle on ice.
yeah, our amateurs are beating their professionals. It was something to get excited about. But there is no more amateur athletics, especially at those levels. I mean, everybody's got their own pride. They start when they're kids with moving away from their family, going to specialized camps, and they get sponsors and name, image, and likeness stuff. It's just there are no more amateur athletes.
Yeah.
We're even getting that down into our high schools now, where kids are getting paid for name,
Really?
image, and
Yep.
likeness.
Oh, I had no idea. I know that it pretty much ruined college sports for me, especially football, because now they have the NIL and the transfer portal. People
Right.
are moving
Yeah.
around like there are some college football and basketball athletes that they haven't even spent more than a year in any particular school. They're
Yeah.
jumping around for the next good opportunity. They're getting not only are they jumping around, they're also getting what are they call sports managers or sports
Oh yeah. Yep.
yeah. So
It
there's money
take
to
Penn State wrestling. They just lost it. They lost a kid never wrestled a match. He just went in the transfer portal, and I believe Oklahoma State picked him up for somebody said $2.7 million a year. A college kid that never wrestled once, and he is going to be good, but
yeah. Well, Penn State wrestling, not to get any specific or anything, Penn State wrestling, I think, is doing the wrong thing because they have a reputation of being the best of the best, and they're also taking advantage of the portal, to bring in the best of the best in the world, well, in the country anyway. And what's
the
happening?
world.
Yeah, you're
They just
right.
got that kid from Japan.
From Japan, yeah. And what's happening is all the kids that were rising through the ranks, waiting their turn to wrestle, they won't get a chance.
No,
The transfer portal is bringing in wrestlers from other programs that want to wrestle at Penn State, and so the development of the athlete from a freshman all the way through the senior, there's no loyalty either way now.
no
It's horrible. Yeah,
money.
about money, and like you said, they're getting paid serious money.
Yeah,
Well, it used to be a time, let's say I'm a quarterback or something like that, and I'm a freshman in college. Well, maybe I'm not good enough to start. So I say, well, I got to work on my game. But
Mhm.
maybe I get into my sophomore more year and I'm still not good enough to start. Well, I'll just go to another school where I can start.
Yeah,
yeah,
Instead of saying, what do I have to do to get better? I'll just go someplace else.
yeah.
yeah.
Tom
Um,
Brady. Tom Brady didn't play till the middle of his junior year.
but I
He
think that also spills into our workplace.
mm-hmm.
People learn these habits, hey, I don't get the promotion here, because the time of our generation and those before us, or you worked 50 years at a factory and got a golden watch. You never left the company. You were there the whole time. Those days are going away quickly. People quit a job every year, and I know people that they don't bat an eye. If another company will give me what I want, I'll go.
You
And
remember the days? Do you remember
they come back, get back to their same company 2 years later because it's competitive. And that's what they're doing.
Well, companies right now, instead of the days of developing and promoting from within are also gone. So
Yeah, it goes both ways.
yeah.
Yeah.
I know if you ask me about my career, I've moved around a bit, and it's always for the benefit of my family, looking for the next best opportunity. But I'll tell you, there were times that I feel like I was looked over for somebody else that came in from the outside, couldn't do half the job, but they recruited outside and people like me, and I'm just saying, I'm just one of many. They felt like, well, I don't think the company is that loyal to their employees, so we started changing. This is something that has happened within the last 30 years. The loyalty it's a two-way street, right? So that has changed, and I accept it. I mean, it worked out well for me, but let me say that there were places that I worked at, I left disappointed because of this lack of loyalty. It's hard to swallow. It really is.
Sure.
But
Did you ever have to train your boss?
no, I don't think so. Yeah, I mean, I've heard of situations like that, but
Mary was in that because she works in trust department most of her life for a major bank. And
yeah.
because she did not have a college degree, they would bring in new college graduates and she'd have to train them. And they end up being her boss,
Mhm.
you
Yeah.
know? So that, rather than companies recognizing talent and say, let's take care of this person, they say, well, you don't have a college degree, you're not going anywhere.
They'll tell you that you're a valued engineer, a valued employee, but
Yeah,
they might not necessarily promote you. So talk is cheap. That's why
sure.
people they start voting with their feet, as they say, right?
Yeah.
And they go find other opportunities. But getting back to sports, can sports serve as a platform to serve God? Can it be used as a platform to serve God? And what kind of examples, if we feel that it can, what kind of examples do we see out there?
My response to that would be to tag on another question to that is what do we learn from sports? If it's going to help us to serve God, what are some lessons we can learn from sports?
There were, I know, raising a boy that's highly competitive and did really well in soccer, wrestling, and I'm not sure where volleyball came from, but he also he also played volleyball in high school. I will tell you this, that there were challenges there, and we also had to make some decisions because we didn't want to compromise. All of a sudden, sports started showing up on Sunday, which was always something that wasn't done. But all of a sudden, these soccer tournaments, and as he got into the elite level, which he did, growing up and developing into the sport, we were faced with this challenge of tournaments that ran both on Saturdays and Sunday, and some of them were out of town. And I have to admit that we caved in on some occasions, but we didn't. Mercy and I didn't know how to handle it.
It's tough because they do conflict with the church schedule.
They do.
And they used to try to avoid that, but now they have no qualms about it.
Yeah. We would not allow them to go to practice on Wednesday because we had church. But then all of a sudden, this whole Sunday thing of tournaments out of town became a challenge. And we just couldn't just say, well, we'll just go for Saturday and leave early because we have church. Because Now the team is counting on Matthew because
Right.
he became a better athlete and became a central figure to their team. It was one of those things that there was no good answer, you know.
It was easier back when you had blue laws and nobody did anything on Sunday but go to
Sunday
church.
was Sunday, yeah.
Yeah.
So that,
Even the bars were closed down.
Yeah. I remember my son when he played football in high school, they were doing the team photo on a Sunday morning.
hmm,
And he didn't even ask. He knew what our stance was. So he wasn't there for the team photo, but they took another picture then and photoshopped him into the team picture.
nice,
So,
yeah,
but yeah, there's no respect for the church calendar. But you think about what you learn from sports, not only on the personal level of striving to be your best, which honestly, as Christians, that's what we should do, to strive to be our best, not for our own ego or own self-gratitude, but we want to honor God with what God has given us. Um, and there are times in life where you're going to get kicked in the teeth.
sure,
And you need to learn how to do that. If we give everybody participation trophies and we don't keep score and nobody ever loses, how are we training our young Christians to be ready to go out into a world where the devil says, I'm coming for you?
yeah. We have to learn to struggle and how to fight back, you know.
Yeah.
That's important.
I had the privilege of judging female and male vocal for what our denomination calls fine arts. And if they went past the level of regional and then the state, they were able to participate in the national finals. And some of them went pretty far. Sandy Patty was one that went years and years and years ago, but she was one that excelled in it. And anyway, I can remember because last couple of years that we actually did it. Now they still do it at our church because of the size of our facility, but I would sometimes have between 80 and 115 female vocals, and usually around 20 to 30 male vocals, and we got that all done in one day. So
Wow.
it was hurry up and wait. 3 judges did this all day. I remember the parents because nobody knew scores until the end of the day. And there could be many that we would pass on if they were, if they met the criteria and did a good job and whatnot, and they met the criteria, we would obviously score them high enough that, in our opinion, they should go on to the state level and then on to the national level if they're that good. And I remember the involvement in the parents when scores would be read aloud after everything had culminated, and it was for everything that day too in our church, dramas and group and preaching and kids getting up and doing a short sermon and things like that. But I remember vaguely whenever I did it. It was fun doing it during the day, and it was really a privilege to be able to hear so much talent and things coming out. And some kids were just so close to making it on. Those are the parents. If your kid squeaks and they're trying to sing, and the parents still pushing them, you're the best in the whole wide world, okay? And they don't make it, the kid already knows because they sit in there and they heard these voices before them and after them that were beautiful or much better than theirs. The kid knew. The parent didn't hear that. The parent knew that their kid was the best in the whole wide world. And so we would sometimes, as soon as this thing was over, before they even read the scores, I'd tell some of the judges, you might want to get in your car and get out of here.
Wow.
I was head judge for a couple of years, and it could be nasty. Now, usually I would stick around because I was head judge. If it was something that was iffy, or if a score wasn't tallied right or whatever, I had to be there to fix it or whatever. But so I would get this. It was not fun at that point.
Mm-hmm.
But the point I'm making is sometimes we see our kids as the very best that there ever was, but yet they squeak. And I think that whenever we get into that place, that's where the challenge between bringing a child up, doing the best they can. It's great to encourage your child to participate and do these things. I think every kid should participate doing something or trying to do something. And if they're not that good, move on. And Barry, you said about the football team. Obviously, that wasn't your calling. You moved to something that would fit in your path. And sometimes we get it in our heads. And another thing too is sometimes the parents living their life through their child. I pushed my youngest daughter, especially, into fine arts. Now, she did do very well. She won the nationals 3 years in a row, but she didn't win it out there, but she did really good. But I pushed her and pushed her. I wish now I would not have pushed her near as hard as I did. And the reason being is she used to play as a teenager, she played a beautiful piano. She doesn't touch a piano today. She has a voice that is gorgeous. She doesn't use it today. And I keep thinking to myself, Wayne, if you wouldn't have put, Nancy wasn't in this. I'm not grouping Nancy into this because she used to tell me, back off. And I'm like, no, I can hear these notes. I know, I know what's going to fly and what's not, and I think it became a chore for her, even though she excelled while I was pushing her. As soon as it was over, she's like, hands off. I don't want no parts of this. I'm not saying that's what she said. I'm just saying that I wished I wouldn't have pushed her the way I did into doing things the way I thought should be done as a parent. And so a lot of times I think that our kids will learn off of other kids, and you obviously, somebody didn't have to tell you, hey, this football thing's gonna get me killed. You move on. There's some things that I know I wouldn't be a good swimmer. I can swim, but I wouldn't compete against them.
But how honest should we be, Wayne? Especially you're talking about music, and we have a lot of music in our churches. You put the children's choir up there in front of the church on Mother's Day Sunday or whatever, and they sing. Do you go up and say, that was really awesome? Or do you tell them what you really think?
Well, you don't go up there and boo them.
Okay. So we're going to lie.
Because
we're going to lie in church.
Well, the parents are going to vote you out. I'll guarantee you that.
But Mary and I occasionally will watch some of these TV shows where they have people perform in front of a group of judges, and so especially early in the season, I'll watch it. I don't watch it much after that because when these people are doing their first performance, sometimes these people are just bad.
Yeah.
But nobody's ever told them that. Everybody always told them, you're awesome, you're awesome, you're awesome.
You're
then
good,
they get in front of real judges, and the judges have to say, you're not that good.
Yeah, you stink.
And then they're crushed because nobody was honest with them.
Yeah. No, and I think, again, my wife tells people that have children or even teenagers that are going through things. My wife is big at telling people, you are to grow your son into the man that he's supposed to be. You are to show him how he's supposed to be a man and how he's supposed to treat a woman and so on and so forth. And on the other hand, you're the mother and father of that young lady. You're to teach her what she's supposed to be in life, the helper of a man, and to do those things and to promote those things that she's called to do automatically by God. We didn't instill male and female. God did that. And so we can't take any credit for any of that. But what we can do as parents, he entrusted these children to us to guide them and direct them. Believe me, I had kids crushed whenever, and I was talking about the competitions. Kids were crushed. They thought they were good because they heard it over and over and over again. And their youth pastors and their congregation, you're the best. I had a young, and it was it was before I went to CLA. We went to another church. I had a family come up to me and says, "Can't believe you didn't put her on." And I'm like, there's 3 judges, and all 3 of us gave her a score lower than what was going to help her out. Even if I did, she still wasn't going on. It took 2 out of 3. And to try to explain that to people is tough, but you got to be honest about it. And I think that honesty is always the best thing. Although on a children's performance, yeah, I think you got to show some grace and mercy on the children's performances. Or
Well, but it's not just children. Have you ever talked to the pastor and said, "Pastor, that was a great message"? When you got in the car and to your spouse and said, "That just didn't work."
I try to avoid them if I do. But although
Okay.
I got to tell you, Barry, I'm telling you, if you get our podcast from church, I thought Sunday's message was at our church was just I'm rating it in the top. I'm telling you, it was fantastic. It just hit me. It hit me between the eyes. It was beautiful. But anyway, I always tried to avoid the pastor if I didn't like what went on. So.
You know, Simon Cowell, right? I guess this has evolved from sport to just basically any kind of talent showcase, and
Well, anything that's competitive.
anything that's competitive. So Simon Cowell, obviously, you know, everybody as soon as he opens his mouth, everybody says boo, or at least it used to be like that when I used to watch it. I don't know what it's like now. But if I was a performer in front of an audience like that, and there's always 4 judges, am I correct in that show? I don't
In that show, yes.
that show, yeah.
Americans Got Talent.
If I was standing after I performed in front of the 4 judges, I wouldn't even listen to what the other 3 would say. I would rather listen to the guy that's going to give it to me straight.
Okay.
And so that takes courage, though, because you know we always look for the positive things. It's just like some people, some friends that I have, they hang out with people who tell them what they want to hear, right? And in competition, any kind of talent, sometimes it's horrible when people are, you know, just they just take on to what they want to hear, the positives, without the constructive criticism that can be sometimes negative. But that's why I think that, you know, Simon Cowell is a very good judge. Oh, a cat attack here! Get out of here. Um, and you know, that would be the only voice that I'd want to hear, because if you perform well on that show, he tells you, but you want more. You want to hear, okay, I'm glad that you liked my performance, but give me something that helps me to get better. And he always does.
Mm-hmm.
But in the church, that can be a challenge because it's not a competition. It's not exactly like sports.
I
But
think
how do we?
the fine arts that Wayne was talking
Yeah, that was competition.
Okay, but Jim's not here, so let's talk about Jim's teaching.
Okay.
Okay. Are you ever going to go up and say, "Jim, that was awful"? Or are you going to go up and say, you know, "I appreciate what you do every week, and you know, some weeks speak to my heart better than others, but you know, thank you for your effort"? Or how blunt are you going to be?
I don't know if I've ever been in that situation with Jim, but
Have you ever heard a pastor that wasn't very good?
yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I
Yes.
didn't feel it was my responsibility to go tell him that he stunk.
Hey, there are times when I knew myself that my message was not very good.
You know what though? For some, and I wrote that down when you were saying that a while ago. Not every message that I hear is for me.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it's for somebody else. And I remember you saying over and over again, and I remember my dad telling me this too, that some people would come up and they got 0 out of it, but then there would be other people that were like, that was the best thing since peanut butter. You know, it reached their soul.
Yeah, I've been on the other end of that when I got done, I thought that just didn't come across the way I had planned for it to come across.
Yeah.
But I've also had people come up to me after the service say, "That's just what I needed to hear."
Yeah. Well,
and that's the dynamics of how God works.
Yeah. Well, since you brought Jim up, he's not here, so let's put him on the boss.
You want to roast him?
Oh, well, I don't roast him because he's too witty. He get me a lot better than I can get him. But Jim is one of those guys, and I think I said this to you or somebody else. One of the things I really appreciate about Jim is his humility, and somewhere down the road, he really grasped the idea of never touching God's glory, and so he does not like a compliment given to him. Now he knows. I think he knows his class goes around saying Jim Hoffman's the best thing since peanut butter. I think he knows that, but he doesn't let on that he knows that. But I can tell you this, because of his stance on his humility, I have probably said more to him of asking questions about certain things he said to see where he was going with that than I have to say, Jim, that was really great. But I will say to him when on occasion, I'll say, man, that really hit me. Something like that kept it away from him having to tell me, I told you not to say that, because Jim's Jim, and you got to love that because it's fresh and it's raw.
Yeah. Jim's the kind of guy that, you could tell him, hey, that was a great teaching. I really got a lot out of it. Thank you, and he'll accept that, and that's fine. But if you tell him why that was a great teaching, and you bring out a point or something that maybe you want to expound on, or something that has provided growth in you, particular specifics, those things he will engage in a conversation.
Yeah, because he'll reuse them. Yeah.
Not only that, because he wants feedback, just like we were talking about Simon Cowell. And the feedback, I mean, positive, you can have positive feedback. And I know I've hit him a couple of times with things that really impacted me. I'll text him after class or whatever, and I'll ask him another question. And that even gets him more excited because, so when he feels like if he got you thinking about something, then he knows that has impacted you as an opportunity for growth in in understanding and the faith, and that's really what he's all about. That's his passion. I think in sports, in performing any kind of talent and all that, parents could be great good teachers, good encouragers, and also, they might be able to offer constructive criticism for a child to get better. But they can also be an extremely negative example. Just think of how embarrassed a young boy would be, let's say in the Little League, and something happened, like let's say maybe the boy did not make the starting lineup for that game, or maybe just even the lineup, they don't feel like he was put in the right place in the lineup, and that impacted the boys' performance and all that. And all of a sudden, this parent, and I've seen women do it as well, go up to the coach and criticize and actually get into a discussion, a very heated discussion with the coach about something that they were very unhappy about. And the boy, I'm dealing with mostly boys, so that's what my examples are. And the boy is extremely embarrassed about that. The example of that parent, even though I think he meant what's best for their child, turned out to be an extremely negative thing for that child, and it's an embarrassment. It may say, I don't want to play baseball anymore. And there's a lot of those parents out there, and the lasting impressions that they make on their children when they behave badly. Let's just leave it at that.
Yeah.
That happens a lot.
Yeah.
When we think about this, about Paul, because Paul likes sports analogy, do you not know that those who run in a race all run, but one receives the prize? That's not true in a lot of our sports anymore. Everybody gets the same prize. And this concept motivated him in his spiritual walk to run. It says run in such a way that you may obtain it. And everyone who competes for the prize is temperate in all things. Now they do it to obtain a perishable crown, but we for an imperishable crown. Therefore I run thus, not with uncertainty. Thus I fight, not as one who beats the air, but I discipline my body and bring it into subjection, lest when I have preached to others, I myself should be disqualified. he uses the sports analogy to talk about how we should serve our God. We need to realize that we're in a battle. And, Satan's not going to come up and say, well, you did great, and pat you on the back and give you a trophy. Satan's going to come up and kick you in the teeth and knock you down a few times. And, this is a battle we're in, and we need to train ourselves to be ready to go. So what do you guys think of that?
Thinking just the words run the race or run in a race means that there's a lot of things that go into that, right? Not just, okay, well, I'll start running. It's, challenging yourself to grow, to develop, to do your best. And there's going to be adversity and the challenges. It could be that you could be running in the rain. It could be that you could be running high winds. It could be that your competitors around you might knock you around. You could trip over a rock. You could do a lot of different things. These are all part of running the race. It's how you respond to those things that's probably just as important as running the race.
And let me put this one up also.
Yeah.
I've fought the good fight. I've finished the race. I've kept the faith. If we don't teach our children how to succeed whenever competition comes against them, when things don't always go their way, are we really, we're talking about sports as in physical training. It can be healthy, but, can train up character also. But I also think this can play over, and as Paul uses these analogies, can equip people for later life in ministry. Not that you have to be called to full-time ministry. We all have our own ministries that God calls us to.
Sure.
And if we don't learn early on how to overcome challenges, how to even look at ourselves and our performances and say, okay, how can I do that better? How can I learn from that experience so the next time I can do even better? Not because we're looking for some trophy, but we want to please our Lord.
Yeah.
Let me throw something out there that our original former pastor, Pastor Paul Waslocki, when he started and he did this a lot of things in his life that I know of personally, but when he started we have the Christmas Wonderland programs at our church that we usually do about 10 or 11 performances for. We're now in the middle of an Easter performance. But I remember when Pastor Paul started those, he started them with the idea that they would be run with excellence. And the word excellence to me always maintain. And to this day, Pastor Paul hasn't been our pastor for probably going on 15 years, maybe. They still do their very best, I'm telling you, to run these programs with excellence, that God be glorified in it through the excellence. One of the reasons I don't get involved in our programs per se too much, I am involved, but I only usher. Not only, that's a big job too. I shouldn't have said only. I usher at the programs, but to be doing anything on the platform or anything like that, the hours and hours and hours of commitments, and I'm saying days of commitments over several months. They started two weeks after Christmas getting ready for the Easter production. And the best of my knowledge right now, it's over 900 booklets have been given out for salvation during the first four productions. That's what it's all about. But the word I wanted to bring out there was done with excellence, no winging it. And I know as a worship leader years ago, there was times where the schedule during the week was just horrendous, or I was out of town, or the other worship leader was there, come down with something, you got to go in and do it. You had to wing it. I never felt good about that, but I've done it. And so there's where you got to rely on the Holy Spirit. When I'm talking spiritually, physically, your chances of winging it, if you're not practiced up, in shape, have the abilities that you should have for what you're supposed to be doing in a sports-minded venue, I don't think it'll come into play near as good. Like Roberto Clemente, they said, how much practice you do? Well, he goes only 4 hours a day. They said, oh, that's, during baseball season, he goes every day, 4 hours a day. Roberto Clemente practiced.
Sure.
So just saying.
Yeah. As churches, do we compete against each other?
Oh, from one church to another?
Yeah.
We don't, because Wayne will
We're-
attest to this. Our church is the best.
Okay. No. Hopefully you
I
feel that
love
way.
it.
I mean, you should feel that way. But do you sometimes look at others and say, well, we're doing better than you, you know?
Well, I love you, Joe.
Huh?
That was beautiful.
Comparing churches and who's a better, like if you're looking in our area, who's a better church than we are, kind of thing.
Okay. What about denominations?
We pray for all denominations.
Yeah.
How competitive are we? Well, we're better than you guys. We speak more truth than you guys do. We're growing faster than you guys are. We're doing this and that, rather than saying, you know what, you got your ministry, we have our ministry. Praise the Lord. We're all being part of the family of God.
Barry, you're a pastor. You may have seen that more than us, but
Yeah. No, well, personally, I have experienced this because, especially as a smaller church, when we had our association or state meetings, I would go and, they'd have testimony times, and there'd be some pastor that'd stand up and say, yeah, last Sunday we had a stranger just traveling through town on vacation, and he just stopped into our church, just drove by and just stopped in, and he wrote us a check for $20,000.
wow.
And now, you know what I'm thinking, and I shouldn't think this, is why didn't he come to our church? It's just part of that competitive. It's like, we could have used that $20,000, and shame on me for being that way, but sometimes that's how you feel.
I got to throw this out here. It sounds like I'm quoting pastors tonight, but I got to do it because it's an impactful statement that Pastor Shane says a lot. So he says all the time, we're not a perfect church, but and he adds this word, really love God.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're looking for a perfect church, you might want to keep driving down Lisburn Road.
Yeah, the healthy way to look at that, Barry, is to look at the churches that profess Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior, born of a virgin, that was sacrificed on the cross, died, and rose again on the third day. To look at all the churches that have that in common as churches that come alongside of us and we partner with them.
Right.
And there are times that our church, because of our resources, have helped neighboring churches and partner with them in whatever their need is. And they realize that CLA is not the church on the hill that everybody wants to, gun for, but it's actually a church on the hill that is partnering with them to bring the light of Christ in our community. And that's healthy.
And Joe, you make a good point. There are some churches that aren't churches. Okay, they're not preaching the gospel. Whatever it is, they're more of a social club or whatever you want to call them. They call themselves churches, but they're really not. So those I have hard time being a partner to. Okay, but if you're preaching the gospel, I don't care what denomination you affiliate with. It doesn't matter to me. If you're preaching the gospel and reaching people for the glory of God, I can celebrate whenever things are going well for you.
Yeah, those $20,000, if they're going to be used for the furthering, the message of the gospel,
right,
in whatever way, sure, whether your church does it or another church does it, as long as it's for the cause, there's nothing to be said more than, wow, that goes toward the kingdom, and
sure,
that's what's key.
Let me throw something out on here though. Partnering with others and different churches and things too. Take it back to the sports end of it. A great player can help make a great team by the way he or she goes about doing things and encouragement and whatever. And as far as, and we were on the church subject there, I think that one of the reasons that churches can excel and not have to be in any kind of competition is because when somebody new comes in and they're unsure or whatever, that a seasoned veteran will help them. And that's called stewardship. And so we start to steward the people that come in that don't know. Gino says all the time, he knows a lot more than he lets on, but well, he actually lets on really good. But Gino says all the time he's a new babe in Christ. Well, I'm telling you, he does a lot to mentor other people also on the things and the attributes that a Christian should be doing inside the church and outside of the church. I'm giving whoops to Gino tonight, but you know, that's the idea of Christianity, that as we become strong, as we grow in the faith, as we become more Christ-like, as we are grasping hold, knowing that we have to do more in the word and we have to grow more and get stronger, the discipleship will automatically, we will want to disciple those around us for them to be able to do the same thing. And that makes great teamwork.
Yeah.
Now, Christ didn't call the church teamwork, but in essence, in a way, it is, because we're a team. I mean, we're all brothers and sisters. We're all on the same team, and we've been picked and called by Him.
Yeah.
Well,
When I think about sports in general, and I guess we're about ready to wrap it up anyway, right, Barry?
Yeah.
You know, sports in general, or anything that has to do with talents, anything that's competition involved. You know, there's two words that kind of come to mind. One is grace, and the other one is focus. When you think about grace, winning gracefully and losing gracefully is key. And the other thing is the focus, that we play to win, but we have to do our best, and that's the key. And
Well, was it Vince Lombardi that says, "Show me a good loser, and I'll show you a loser"?
yeah, well,
There's a difference between being a good loser and losing gracefully.
yeah,
Okay, you can have grace in losing, but you gotta hate losing if you ever going to become a winner.
agreed. Yeah, but to learn
And
how to lose gracefully,
yeah,
it eventually that'll make a winner. You know, so
but
those are good words.
the good news is though, Joe,
Yeah.
in the church we never lose.
No,
We are already guaranteed the victory.
yeah, we're victorious.
We
Yeah.
may get smacked alongside the head a couple times, and you know the powers of Satan may knock us down a few times, but we know how this ends. I've read the book of Revelation. I know who wins.
Running the race, you know, there's a lot of obstacles and challenges, but the objective is to learn that when you're knocked down, to just pick yourself up and keep running.
And that certainly can be true in our witnessing.
Absolutely.
There'll be times when you witness and you said, that was awful. But you don't know what God's going to do with that.
Yeah.
So, you know, we just keep on keeping on for God's glory. So
Keep on running.
yeah. So there's things we can learn from sports. Unfortunately, there's a lot of bad lessons
Sure.
that we can get from sports. But if it's done in the right way, I think it can be beneficial to Christians and non-Christians alike, actually. But I think it can really help Christians to learn, you know, when things don't go your way, you don't quit. You keep going. And if you want to, as Paul says, you run the race to win the prize. And the prize is God.
Yeah. When it comes to parents and developing children in sports, balance is the key. You know, teaching them that balance. And but if you're going to go on one side more than the other, is definitely the faith part. To teach them that the priority is to grow in Christ, because that long term, that brings way more dividends than sports. But
Yeah.
that's also a challenge for parents, because it's difficult in today's environment to know when you just have to say no to sports and prioritize church.
Okay.
A tough decision.
All right. Well, good discussion, guys. I appreciate you guys giving your input. We didn't miss the other two at all, did we?
Yeah, we did.
Oh, we did? Okay. That's part of your grace, right?
No, it's gracefully truth.
Okay. I'm
Graceful
gonna
truth.
stop.